The medic bay smelled wrong. I had served in the Galactic Defense Coalition for 12 cycles, and in all that time I had never encountered a scent quite like this, sharp chemical, unnerving in ways I could not articulate, even to myself. My name is Vectoral Intelligence, officer of the 3rd Fleet, and I was dying. The plasma burns across my thorax were beyond field treatment. My second heart had already stopped. The evacuation pod I had escaped in was supposed to deposit me at the nearest Coalition medical station, but something had gone catastrophically wrong with the navigation systems. Instead of finding myself in the sterile embrace of proper galactic medicine, I had crashed on a backwater planet that barely registered on our charts. Earth, the locals called it. I had heard rumors about humans, whispers in the mess hall, stories traded between veterans over fermented beverages, the new species that had somehow passed the Coalition's entrance trials despite possessing technology that belonged in a museum. The creatures who wore their emotions like some species wore ceremonial armor, broadcasting every feeling across their peculiar faces. Primitives, we called them, adequate but unremarkable. I was about to learn how spectacularly wrong that assessment was. The door to the medical facility burst open with unnecessary force. A human female rushed in, her face flushed with that crimson coloration their species exhibited during exertion. Her head, covering what I would later learn was called hair, had been hastily tied back, revealing a face that seemed far too young for the confidence radiating from her movements. Holy hell, she breathed, and even through my failing translator implant, I could detect the mixture of shock and determination in her voice. Her name, I would discover, was Kira Bennett, 26 Earth years old, a civilian trauma surgeon at a rural hospital in a place called Montana. She had absolutely no business knowing how to treat an alien soldier from a species she had never encountered before. She did not let that stop her. Okay, Kira muttered, her hands already moving with practiced efficiency. Okay, 2 hearts. You have 2 hearts, of course you do. Why wouldn't you have 2 hearts? I tried to speak, to warn her that my physiology was incompatible with human medical techniques, that she should contact the Coalition immediately, that attempting to treat me would likely result in my immediate death. What came out was a gurgling sound that even I found pathetic. Hey, she said, and her hand, warm and impossibly soft, pressed against what passed for my shoulder. Stay with me. I know you can't understand me, but you're going to be fine. You hear me? Fine. She was lying. Of course, I was medical officer trained myself. I knew what fatal injuries looked like, and mine qualified spectacularly. But there was something in her voice, something in the absolute refusal to acknowledge reality, that made my remaining heartbeat just a fraction stronger. The next hour dissolved into a blur of pain and impossible competence. Kira worked with a speed that would have impressed Coalition combat medics. She had called for assistance, and 2 other humans had arrived, both looking equally shocked but adapting with that peculiar human flexibility we had noted in the species assessments. One was an older male with gray hair, Dr. Ellis, who kept making vocalizations that sounded like laughter even as his hands performed delicate procedures. The other was a younger female named Jenna, whose hands shook for approximately 30 seconds before steadying with remarkable resolve. His blood is blue, Jenna whispered, staring at the fluid coating her gloves. So is a horseshoe crab's, Kira replied, without looking up, hemacannon instead of hemoglobin. Ellis, I need you to stabilize this. Organ, is this a lung? It looks like a lung had a baby with a bellows. I have no idea what I'm doing, Ellis admitted cheerfully, his hands nonetheless moving with precision, but neither did I when they first showed me a human heart in med school, and those people turned out mostly okay. That statement should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something warm and completely inappropriate given my circumstances. Hope, I realized with shock. The humans were giving me hope. They had no proper equipment for my species. Their scanning technology was laughably primitive, barely able to penetrate my dermal layers. Their surgical tools were designed for their own fragile biology, far too crude for the delicate work required. They had no database of Threxian physiology, no guide to our organ placement, no knowledge of which chemicals would poison us and which might save us. They improvised anyway. Kira used something called an ultrasound, designed to view human fetuses to map my internal structure. She cross-referenced my anatomy with images she pulled up on a handheld device, comparing my organs to everything from earth creatures called octopi to their own cardiovascular system. When their equipment proved inadequate, she modified it, sometimes in ways that made Ellis WSC. That probe was not designed to do that, he noted. Neither was I, Kira shot back. And yet here we are performing Xeno's surgery in Montana. Roll with it, Ellis. The plasma burns were beyond their technology to heal completely. Instead, Kira focused on preventing infection and stabilizing the damaged tissue. She used something called silver sulfadiene, a substance designed for human burn victims, testing it on a small patch of my skin first. When I did not immediately expire, she applied it more broadly, mixing it with a synthetic skin substitute that adhered to my dermal layers in ways their own artificial skin never would. This might scar, she warned me, as if I cared about cosmetic concerns while dying. But you'll live. My second heart had stopped, in human medical science had no mechanism to restart a heart that ran on bioelectric principles they barely understood. So Kira did not try to restart it. Instead, she supported my remaining heart using their primitive but effective monitoring equipment to track its rhythm, administering careful doses of stimulants when it began to flag, and manually compressing my primary cardiac organ when even that proved insufficient. For 3 hours she kept me alive through sheer stubborn refusal to accept the alternative. When my translator finally repaired itself enough to function, the first words I heard clearly were not reassuring medical jargon. Stay with me, you beautiful alien. Disaster, Kira was muttering, her forehead pressed against the edge of the surgical table, one hand still monitoring my pulse. I did not spend 3 years in trauma surgery to lose my first extraterrestrial patient. You're going to live, and then you're going to tell me all about space and maybe introduce me to other aliens and basically make this entire terrifying experience worth the therapy I'm definitely going to need. I managed a weak laugh which came out sounding like gravel in a waste processor. Kira's head snapped up, her eyes a peculiar shade of brown with green flecks widening. You understood that, she whispered. Oh my God, you understood that. Yes, I rasped. My voice raw but functional. Your bedside manner needs work. Kira's face. Did that thing human faces do when they experience joy, stretching into what the species calls a smile, it should have looked grotesque, that display of teeth and emotional vulnerability. Instead, I found it oddly comforting. You're talking, she said, and I realized with surprise that her eyes were leaking. Tears, I remembered, humans leaked. When emotional, you're actually talking. Ellis Jenna, he's talking. I am also, I managed, still dying. Well, yes, Kira admitted, sitting back and wiping her face with the back of her hand, leaving a smear of my blue blood across her cheek, but significantly less dying than you were 3 hours ago. We're going to call that a win. Ellis appeared beside her, his face bearing that expression humans made when satisfied. Your vitals are stabilizing. That second heart of yours is still offline, but your primary ticker is holding steady. Whatever Kira did, it worked. Whatever I did, Kira laughed, the sound slightly unhinged. Ellis, I have no idea what I did. I was making it up as I went along. The best medicine often involves controlled improvisation, Ellis replied. Sagely, I looked between them, these humans who had saved my life using nothing but inadequate tools, incomplete knowledge, and apparently sheer stubbornness. Standard coalition protocol would have declared me unsalvageable. My own people would have focused on making my death comfortable rather than attempting the impossible. These humans had not received that memo. Why? I asked, the question escaping before I could consider the wisdom of it. Why save me? Your species barely knows we exist. I could be dangerous. I could be carrying diseases. I could be a threat. Kira looked at me as though I had asked why water was wet. Because you needed help, she said simply. What else would we do? Over the following days, I learned that this was not merely Kira's personal philosophy. It was apparently a distressingly common human trait. The hospital administrator, a stern woman named Margaret, who had initially been furious about the unauthorized use of medical facilities, took one look at my condition and authorized whatever resources Kira needed. The local government, after approximately 6 hours of panic, decided that harboring an injured alien was perfectly acceptable and began making arrangements to contact the coalition. The town's residents started leaving food at the hospital, uncertain what I could eat, but determined to help anyway. One elderly human male left a casserole and a note that read, "Welcome to Earth, sorry about the crash." I consumed the casserole carefully, analyzing each component. It would not kill me, though. The dairy products their species enjoyed would require my system to adapt. Note, however, affected me more than the food, the casual acceptance, the apology for circumstances beyond their control. The simple welcome. Humans, I was learning, were dangerously kind. Kira visited daily, even after her shifts ended. She brought me human entertainment, attempting to explain concepts like movies and music. She described her planet with enthusiasm, pointing to pictures on her communication device, showing me landscapes and cities and animals with names like dog and cat that served no apparent purpose beyond companionship. You keep creatures that provide no tactical or nutritional advantage. I asked Buste. We keep them because they're cute and we love them, Kira replied. Not everything needs a tactical Purpose, this statement felt revolutionary. She told me about human history, and I listened with growing horror and fascination. Wars that devastated continents, diseases that killed millions, natural disasters that should have driven the species to extinction. Through all of it, humans had persisted, adapted, and somehow retained that irrational optimism that seemed baked into their genetic code. We're stubborn, Kira explained. It's basically our species' defining trait. We don't know when to quit that much, I said dryly. I had noticed my recovery should have taken months. Human medical intervention combined with my own people's regenerative abilities compressed it to weeks. My second heart remained offline, which would require coalition medical technology to repair. But I was mobile, functional, and alive. Against all reasonable expectations, the coalition arrived on day 17. Diplomatic vessel, sleek and impressive, descended on coordinates I had transmitted. The landing drew crowds of humans, all eager for their first official contact with galactic society. Their enthusiasm was adorable and slightly concerning in equal measure. Ambassador Krelul Tarn, a Vosh diplomat, whose species had been coalition members for 600 years, emerged from the vessel. With appropriate gravitas, his entourage included medical personnel, security forces, and various officials whose purpose I could not immediately determine. I stood beside Kira as they approached, acutely aware of how primitive Earth's landing area looked compared to proper spaceports. Humans had cleared a field and added lights. It was charmingly inadequate. Officer Vectoral Kellarn's voice resonated through his chest cavity, his translator rendering it in perfect galactic standard. We are relieved to find you alive. Your emergency beacon suggested fatal injuries. The reports of my death, I replied, were greatly exaggerated thanks to human intervention. Kellarn's eyes, all four of them, focused on Kira. She straightened slightly under the attention, but did not back down. Humans, I had learned, had little instinctive fear of the unknown. It was either admirable or insane, possibly both. You are the medical practitioner responsible for his survival, the ambassador asked. I'm one of them, Kira replied. Dr. Ellis and Nurse Jenna helped, so did basically everyone at the hospital. It was a team effort using human medical technology, Kellarn said slowly, as though confirming an impossibility on a species you had never encountered before. Yeah, Kira agreed. It was honestly terrifying. Would not recommend. 10 out of 10 for excitement, 3 out of 10 for knowing what I was doing. I watched Krelul Tarn process this response. Humans had not yet mastered diplomatic double-speak. They tended to say exactly what they meant, a trait that would either serve them well or catastrophically poorly in galactic politics. The coalition, the ambassador said, carefully wishes to express its gratitude for preserving the life of one of our officers. Such intervention, particularly given the risks and unknown, speaks well of your species character. He produced a small case from his robes, opening it to reveal a medal. Inside, the Coalition Star of Mercy, awarded to individuals who saved lives at significant personal risk. I had seen them awarded perhaps 3 times in my entire career, always to decorated combat medics, never to a civilian of a species barely admitted to galactic society. This honor is traditionally reserved for coalition members, Krell explained. Lifting the medal, however, circumstances warrant exception, Dr. Kira Bennett, on behalf of the Galactic Defense Coalition and by the authority vested in me, I present you with the Star of Mercy in recognition of extraordinary medical intervention and preservation of sentient life. He placed the medal in Kira's hand. She stared at it, her expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something approaching tears. I just did my job, she said quietly. No, I interjected, stepping forward. You exceeded your job by several magnitudes. You saved a life your species had no obligation to save, using methods you had no training for, accepting risks you had no way to calculate. That is not just doing your job, Dr. Bennett. That is heroism. Kira looked at me, and in that moment I saw the truth of human nature reflected in her eyes, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat, the irrational hope, the bone-deep conviction that every life mattered regardless of origin or circumstance. Dangerous, I had thought when I first crashed. These humans were dangerously kind. I had been correct. Their kindness was dangerous indeed, but only to those foolish enough to mistake it for weakness. The medal ceremony concluded with appropriate formality. Krell invited human representatives to begin formal diplomatic proceedings which would take months but would inevitably result in expanded Earth coalition relations. My people wanted access to human medical innovation, agricultural techniques, and that peculiar creative thinking that allowed them to solve problems no one else would even attempt. But as the diplomatic vessel prepared to depart, taking me with it for the cardiac repair I found myself hesitating at the boarding ramp. Kira stood among the crowd of humans who had gathered to watch the aliens leave. She still held the medal, turning it over in her hands, as though unsure it was real. I approached her one final time. Thank you, I said simply, because sometimes human directness was exactly right. For my life, for your kindness, for showing me what your species is truly capable of. Kira smiled, that peculiar expression that still looked slightly wrong but felt entirely right. Come back sometime, she said. We'll have coffee. I'll teach you about terrible Earth reality TV. It'll be great. I would like that, I replied, meaning it more than was probably appropriate for a coalition intelligence officer. As the vessel lifted off, carrying me back to the wider galactic community, I looked down at Earth growing smaller. Beneath us, that small blue planet, barely notable on coalition charts, inhabited by a species we had dismissed as adequate but unremarkable. We had been so magnificently wrong. Humans were neither adequate nor unremarkable. They were stubborn, creative, and dangerously compassionate. They would reshape the galactic community in ways we could not yet imagine, not through military might or technological superiority, but through that fundamental refusal to give up on anyone, even dying aliens who crashed unannounced into their lives. The galaxy, I suspected, was about to learn what I had learned. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated, and any civilization wise enough to recognize that would benefit enormously from having humans as allies. The medal Kira held would be the first of many. Of that I was absolutely certain. 6 months, that was how long it took for coalition medical technology to repair My second heart process the diplomatic paperwork and clear me for active duty. 6 months of recuperation on the medical station orbiting Proxima Centauri, surrounded by the finest physicians the galaxy had to offer, all of them fascinated by how primitive human medicine had kept me alive long enough for proper treatment. 6 months of thinking about a surgeon in Montana who had saved my life with improvised equipment and sheer determination. I was not the same officer who had crashed on Earth. The experience had changed something fundamental in how I viewed the universe, particularly how I viewed humanity. My reports to coalition intelligence reflected this shift, though I suspected my superiors thought the trauma had affected my judgment. They assigned me to the newly established Earth Liaison Program. Anyway, apparently having nearly died on a planet made you the ideal candidate to facilitate diplomatic relations with that planet. Coalition logic at its finest. The position came with unexpected privileges, regular travel to Earth, direct communication channels with human governmental bodies, access to their scientific communities as they work to bridge the technological gap between their civilization and the rest of the galaxy. It also came with one specific request I had submitted personally and had, somewhat to my surprise, been approved: medical consultation rights with Dr. Kira Bennett. The official justification was that my unique case required ongoing monitoring by the physician most familiar with the initial treatment. The real reason was that I wanted to see her again, wanted to understand if that spark of connection I had felt was genuine or merely trauma and gratitude. The transport shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere 3 weeks after my official appointment to the liaison program. I had sent advance notice to the hospital in Montana, keeping the message professional and brief. Dr. Bennett's response had been characteristically human: "You better bring space stories, good ones, the kind with laser battles and diplomatic incidents. Also, do you drink coffee?" Now, because I found an amazing new roast, the hospital looked exactly as I remembered it, small by galactic standards but clean and efficiently organized. The humans had added a discreet landing pad since my last visit, a concession to the increased alien traffic their world was experiencing. Earth had become something of a curiosity in coalition space, the newest member world with the most improbable success stories. My survival was merely the first. Kira met me at the entrance, and I was struck again by how young she appeared by Threxian standards. Our species aged differently, our lives spanning nearly 2 centuries on average. Humans burned bright and fast, packing tremendous experience into their brief decades. Vec, she said, using the shortened name she had adopted. During my recovery, her smile was immediate and genuine. "You look amazing." Both hearts working, both hearts functioning at optimal capacity. I confirmed, allowing myself a small smile in return. "Thanks to you keeping one operational long enough for proper repairs." Team effort, she reminded me, but her pleasure at the compliment was obvious. "Come on, I've got about an hour before my next surgery. Let's catch up." She led me through the hospital to a small outdoor area humans called a courtyard. Plants grew in organized chaos, and the air smelled of growing things in that peculiar earth mixture of oxygen and nitrogen that still felt slightly foreign to my respiratory system. We sat at a metal table, and Kira produced 2 containers of the beverage called coffee. I had tried it during my previous stay and found it simultaneously unpleasant and addictive, much like many aspects of human culture. So Hira began wrapping her hands around her container in that way humans did for warmth and comfort. Space stories. I'm ready. Hit me with your best. I told her about the Vosh trade negotiations that had nearly collapsed over a misunderstanding about food, presentation about the Kellogg's ambassador who had been terrified of human dogs, convinced they were miniature predators, about the growing fascination throughout coalition space with human music, art, and entertainment, which other species found bizarrely compelling despite its primitive production values. Were novelty, Kira observed, amused rather than offended. The weird new kids in the galactic neighborhood. You are far more than that, I countered. Human adaptability is becoming legendary. Your scientists are already proposing solutions to problems that have stymied coalition researchers for decades. Your engineers are finding applications for galactic technology we never considered. Your medical community is revolutionizing how we approach cross-species treatment. Kira raised an eyebrow. Because I got lucky with you. Because you succeeded where you should have failed, I corrected, and because you taught us something crucial. We had become complacent, relying on established protocols and proven methods. Humans approach every problem as though protocols are merely suggestions. That flexibility is valuable beyond measure. She considered this while sipping her coffee. I've been consulting with some coalition medical researchers. She admitted they want to document what we did, turn it into actual protocols for emergency xenome medicine. It's wild. Honestly, 6 months ago, I was treating broken bones and appendicitis. Now I'm helping write procedures for treating species I can't even pronounce. How are you handling the attention? I asked, genuinely curious. It's weird, Kira said honestly. Good weird mostly. The medal you guys gave me opened doors I never expected. I've been invited to speak at conferences, consult on research projects, even got offered a position at a hospital in Geneva that specializes in preparing for more alien contact. Something in my chest tightened at the thought of her leaving Montana. Irrational, given that my duties would take me all over coalition space. Still, I had imagined her here in this small hospital exactly as I had left her. Are you considering the position? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Kira looked at me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling she could read more in my face than I intended to show. I haven't decided, she said carefully. Part of me wants to stay here. This is home. These are my people. But another part thinks about all the good I could do out there, helping facilitate better medical understanding between species, making sure what happened with you becomes standard practice instead of a lucky accident. It was not luck, I insisted. It was skill, determination, and courage. It was terrifying, Kira laughed. I had nightmares for weeks about accidentally killing you because I used the wrong medication or cut the wrong organ. Do sometimes. The admission surprised me. Humans hid their vulnerabilities so poorly, wearing their fears and hopes openly. It should have been a weakness. Instead, it felt like trust. I have something for you, I said, retrieving a small case from my carrying Pouch from the Coalition Medical Council. Kira opened it cautiously, revealing a data chip and a formal-looking certificate rendered in multiple languages, including English. What is this? A provisional medical license for xenomedicine practice, I explained, valid across all Coalition member worlds. It requires additional training and certification, but the Council agreed that your demonstrated expertise warranted fast-tracking the process. If you choose to pursue it, you would be the first human certified to practice medicine on other species. Kira stared at the certificate, her expression cycling through shock, excitement, and something that looked like fear. This is huge, she whispered. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. This is deserved, I corrected. You saved a life against impossible odds. The galaxy noticed. She looked up at me, eyes bright. Did you have anything to do with this? I submitted a recommendation. I admitted the decision was theirs entirely. Vec, her voice carried that particular tone humans used when they were feeling emotional. Thank you. Seriously, this is incredible. You are incredible, I said, meaning it more than was probably wise. You represent the best of what humanity offers to the greater galactic community. The moment stretched between us, charged with something I could not quite name. Human emotions were contagious. Apparently, my species prided itself on logical thinking and emotional restraint, but sitting across from Kira Bennett, watching her process this life-changing opportunity, I felt decidedly Unthrexian levels of sentiment. Her communication device buzzed, breaking the moment. She glanced at it and sighed. My surgery is in 15 minutes. I have to prep. She stood, then hesitated. How long are you on Earth? 3 weeks this visit, I replied, establishing liaison protocols with various human governmental bodies. Tedious but necessary. Have dinner with me, Kira said suddenly. Tonight, nothing fancy, just local food and conversation. I want to hear more about the galaxy, and you need to try actual Montana beef before you leave. I should have declined, maintaining professional boundaries between Coalition officers and civilian consultants was standard protocol. Personal relationships complicated. Diplomatic assignments. I would enjoy that very much, I heard myself say. Kira's smile could have powered a small star. That evening she took me to what she called a steakhouse, a human establishment that specialized in cooking animal flesh to various degrees of thermal preparation. The other patrons stared openly at my presence, but Montana humans had grown somewhat accustomed to occasional alien visitors. Several nodded greetings. One elderly female actually waved. You are something of a local celebrity, I observed. We're both local celebrities, Kira corrected, studying a menu. The alien who crashed and the doctor who saved him were basically a feel-good news story that people bring up at parties. The meal was educational. Humans consumed dead animal tissue with an enthusiasm that should have been disturbing but was somehow endearing. Kira ordered something called a ribeye, cooked to medium rare specifications, and spent considerable effort explaining the cultural significance of cattle ranching. In Montana history, I tried a small portion. The texture was challenging, but the flavor was acceptable. More importantly, Kira's obvious pleasure in sharing her culture made the experience worthwhile. Tell me about Threxia, she requested, working through her meal with efficient precision. Your home world, what's it like? I described the crystal cities of my planet, the twin suns that painted our skies and shades. Humans had no names for the vast archives where my people stored millennia of accumulated knowledge. I told her about our complex social hierarchies, our emphasis on intellectual achievement, our slow, careful approach to change and innovation. It sounds beautiful, Kira said when I finished, and kind of lonely. Observation struck deeper than expected. Lonely, all that knowledge and achievement, but you described it like a museum. Where's the chaos, the mess, the parts where things go wrong and people have to improvise? We value order and predictability, I explained. Chaos is inefficient. Chaos is alive, Kira countered gently. It's where new ideas come from. It's what happens when you can't plan everything and have to make do with what you've got, like saving an alien soldier with inadequate equipment and no training manual. I thought but did not say hello. Conversation flowed easily through the meal and continued as Kira drove us to somewhere she called a lookout point. Earth vehicles were primitive but functional, and I was learning to tolerate the speeds at which humans operated them. The lookout provided a vista of mountains and valleys illuminated by Earth's single moon and countless stars. Kira parked and led me to a bench overlooking the view. This is where I come when I need to think, she explained, sitting down. Usually after a bad shift or when I need perspective. I settled beside her, careful of the bench's weight limitations. It is peaceful. Yeah, she was quiet for a moment. I came here after you left, kept thinking about what you said about humans being more than adequate, about how we might matter in the bigger galactic picture. You do matter, I assured her, more than you realize. I've been thinking about Geneva, Kira admitted, about that position, about what it would mean to leave Montana and work toward building better bridges between humans and everyone else out there. My chest tightened again, that peculiar sensation I was experiencing with increasing frequency around this human. What have you concluded? That I'm terrified, she laughed, and that I probably need to do it anyway. You don't get opportunities like this by playing it safe. No, I agreed. You do not. She turned to face me directly. What about you? What do you want, Vec? Really want? Beyond the diplomatic duties and the reports? The question should have been easy to deflect. I was trained in information security and maintaining appropriate professional distance, but Kira's directness demanded honesty in return. I want to understand your species better, I said carefully, not as an intelligence officer or diplomat, but personally. I want to know why you saved me when logic suggested you should not. Why you risk yourselves for others without hesitation. Why you face impossible situations with jokes instead of fear. And Kira prompted, sensing there was more. And I want to see you again, I admitted regularly, not just as a professional courtesy, but because your company brings me something I did not know I was missing. The silent stretch between us filled with the sounds of Earth's night. Insects chirping, wind through vegetation, distant animal calls. That's not standard diplomatic protocol, is it? Kira finally asked, her voice soft. No, I confirmed. It is not good, she said, and reached over to take my hand. Human hands were remarkably soft compared to Threxian dermal plating. Fragile, really. Yet the connection felt like something solid and real, bridging the vast differences between our species. I want to see you too, Kira continued. I've been trying to convince myself it was just gratitude or fascination with the exotic alien, but it's more than that. You are brilliant and kind, and you see humans as something special instead of primitive. That matters to me. You are special, I said, and not primitive, merely younger as a civilization. There is a difference. We're going to have to figure this out. Carefully, Kira observed the whole cross-species relationship thing. I'm guessing that comes with complications. Significant complications, I agreed. Biological incompatibilities, cultural misunderstandings, logistical challenges given our respective duties, potential diplomatic incidents if handled poorly. But possible, Kira asked. I thought about the past 6 months, the constant thoughts of this human surgeon, the way my heart had responded when I saw her. Again, the feeling of rightness sitting here beside her, looking at her world. Stars. Possible, I confirmed, and worth pursuing despite the complications. Kira squeezed my hand gently. Then we'll figure it out. Humans are good at improvising, remember. We sat there for another hour talking about possibilities and plans. Kira would pursue the Geneva position, building her expertise in Xenom medicine. I would continue my liaison duties but request frequent assignments to Earth. We would communicate regularly, navigate the complexities together, and see where this improbable connection might lead. It was messy and uncertain and completely illogical by Threxian standards. It was also perfectly human. I was learning, and perhaps that was exactly what I needed. The next 3 weeks passed too quickly. I completed my official duties, establishing protocols and communication channels that would facilitate Earth's growing integration into coalition affairs. But the moments I treasured most were the stolen hours with Kira, learning about her world and teaching her about mine. She introduced me to human art, music that conveyed emotion through sound patterns I was still learning to interpret. I taught her basic galactic standard, watching her laugh at the formal conjugations. We shared meals and stories and quiet moments that felt significant in ways I could not articulate. On my final evening before departure, we returned to the hospital where our story had begun. The medic bay had been upgraded with some coalition technology, gifts from the medical council to facilitate future cross-species emergencies. This is where you were lying when I first saw you, Kira said, running her hand along the examination table. You look so broken. I remember thinking there was no way you'd survive. And yet I did, I replied, because you refused to accept the alternative. Stubborn human nature, she smiled. It's gotten our species this far. I pulled a small box from my pouch, something I had commissioned during my recovery period. Inside was a pendant crafted by a Threxian artisan from materials sourced from both our worlds, blue crystal from Thraxia set in silver, minded from Earth, shaped into a design that represented the Coalition Star of Mercy, a reminder. I said as I placed it in her hands that you changed more than just my life. You changed how the galaxy sees humanity. Every life you save from this point forward, human or otherwise, reflects that initial act of compassion. Kira's eyes leaked again, those emotional tears that still fascinated me. She clasped the pendant carefully. I'm going to miss you, she said. Simply, I will miss you as well, I replied, but this is not an ending. Merely a transition. Promise me something, Kira said. Promise that no matter how complicated things get, we'll keep being honest with each other. No diplomatic double-speak, no hiding behind professional protocol. Just truth. I promise, I agreed. Humans may have taught me many things, but that directness might be the most valuable. We stood there in the medic bay where our improbable story began. Two beings from different worlds who had found something unexpected in each other. The galaxy would call it unusual, perhaps even inappropriate, but standing there with Kira, feeling the rightness of the moment, I understood what humans meant when they talked about following your heart, even if you had two of them recently repaired, both beating in patterns that suggested emotions you were not supposed to feel. The next morning, I boarded the Coalition transport for departure. Kira stood among the gathered crowd, that pendant visible against her shirt. She did not wave dramatically or call out farewells. Instead, she simply met my eyes and nodded once, a gesture of understanding and promise. As Earth shrank behind us, I touched my own chest, where both hearts beat steadily, kept alive by human determination and ingenuity. The galaxy was changing, adapting to accommodate humanity's unique perspective. We had underestimated them initially, dismissed them as adequate but unremarkable. We would not make that mistake again. And somewhere in Geneva, a human surgeon would be learning xenomedicine, building bridges between species, carrying forward the legacy of compassion that had saved one dying alien soldier in a Montana hospital. The medal she had received was just the beginning, I suspected, given humanity's track record for defying expectations. It would be far from the last. My people valued logic and careful planning, but perhaps I thought as the transport jumped to faster than light travel, there was wisdom in the human approach, as well in taking chances, in refusing to give up, in finding connection despite impossible odds. After all, Kira had saved my life using methods that should not have worked. Maybe that same impossible success could apply to other areas as well, like teaching a Threxian intelligence officer that sometimes the heart, or in my case hearts, knew things that logic could not explain. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but the greatest wonder I had found was surprisingly simple. A human surgeon in Montana who had looked at a dying alien and decided that every life mattered, regardless of origin. She had saved me in more ways than one.